God's chosen one, your victory is no accident. It's a divine declaration. Have you ever paused, truly paused, to reflect on the magnitude of your spiritual journey? Not just where you are now, but what you've walked through, fought through, cried through, and conquered. This moment is not just another pause in your day. It's a holy checkpoint. A spiritual mile marker. Because what you've accomplished isn't ordinary. What you've survived isn't just survival. What you've conquered, it's a revelation. You didn't just make it through. You obliterated 97% of the demons that were sent to destroy you. That's not poetic exaggeration. That's not symbolic encouragement. That's the truth. And it's time you fully understood the weight of that truth. This isn't just a feel-good message, this is a divine announcement. A war trumpet declaring what the enemy already knows and fears: you won. Let that sink in. While the world slept, you were fighting a war most couldn't see. While others scoffed at the idea of spiritual warfare, you were in the trenches. You saw the signs. You heard the whispers. You felt the pressure tighten around your soul. And what did you do? You didn't retreat. You didn't bow. You didn't break. You stepped boldly onto the battlefield, unflinching, and what followed was not mere endurance, it was domination. You shattered their plans. You exposed their tactics. You dismantled their grip. And one by one, the demons fell. Not because you screamed louder. Not because you fought harder. But because you stood firmer. Because you stayed anchored in truth. Because your peace confused them. Your patience disarmed them. Your faith outlasted their fury. You see, the path of God's chosen ones has never been paved with ease. It's not for the faint of heart. This road is narrow, steep, and often lonely. But it's also holy, divine, and drenched in victory. And now is the time to claim it. Let's be honest, most people live unaware that they're even in a war. They go about their lives numb to the attacks, oblivious to the schemes, lulled into a false sense of safety. But not you. You saw the war. And more than that, you engaged. While others remained blind to the unseen war raging around them, you didn't just survive it, you obliterated 97% of the demons sent to destroy you. Pause. Take a breath. Feel the gravity of that truth. That number isn't just statistical, it's spiritual. That's not just victory. That's divine warfare executed with precision. That's heaven's strategy flowing through you. That's the anointing made manifest in battle. Now tell me, does that sound like a coincidence? Of course not. This is what happens when someone fully steps into their identity as a chosen one of God. When someone refuses to bow to darkness. When someone prays when others panic. When someone fasts when others feast. When someone worships in the storm and doesn't wait for sunshine to lift their hands. This is the result of spiritual discipline. Of holy awareness. Of divine alignment. And this, right now, is your moment to recognize it, own it, and rise in it. So today, before anything else, before we talk about strategy, or discipline, or the spiritual traits that led to this moment, we stop to honor the victory. We stop to celebrate the spiritual warrior who did not quit, who did not fold, who stood firm and emerged victorious. That warrior is you. Now we want to pause and extend deep gratitude, not just to you, but to this whole community of warriors. Those who supported this mission, this channel, this movement with your prayers, your words of encouragement, and yes, your generosity, especially through super thanks. You're not just listeners, you are co-laborers in this mission to awaken, equip, and empower God's chosen ones. And if you're reading this, if your spirit is burning right now with confirmation, then let your comment be your declaration. Drop a bold, "I claim this victory," in the comments. Let it be known in the spiritual realm, you are not stepping back. You are marching forward. You're not just surviving anymore. You're dominating. This is a celebration, yes. But it's also a call. A line in the sand. The enemy thought you'd crumble. Instead, you crushed him. Now the real question begins to burn. How? How did you defeat them so thoroughly? What made you the warrior they now whisper about in their infernal circles? Because demons don't just fear brute strength. They fear spiritual authority. They fear self-control. They fear discernment. They fear peace. They fear light that won't dim, even when surrounded by darkness. And they fear you. So stay with us. Because what comes next is more than a lesson. It's an unveiling. We're going to break down the weapons you used, some of which you didn't even realize were weapons. We'll explore the traits that terrify hell itself. And you'll finally understand why your presence shifts atmospheres. Why your silence breaks chains. Why your energy burns darkness before it gets too close. But before we get there, breathe this moment in. You defeated 97% of the demons. You didn't just dodge them, you disarmed them. You didn't just survive them, you silenced them. And now, you rise. Let the darkness take note. Let heaven rejoice. Let your soul remember. You are chosen. You are victorious. And your journey has only just begun. Ready to step into even greater power? Then let's continue. The battlefield awaits, but now, you walk onto it not as a survivor, but as a conqueror. If you ever needed confirmation that your strength is not of this world, look no further than this. You have mastered one of the rarest and most powerful weapons in the spiritual realm, self-control. Yes, self-control. Not the kind that simply holds your tongue or delays a reaction, but the kind that withstands a storm of emotional attacks and remains unshaken. The kind that turns chaos into silence, and temptation into wisdom. The kind that strips demons of their power because you refuse to play their game. Think about it. These dark forces don't come at you with claws and fangs. They come cloaked in chaos. They push buttons. They stir up anger. They whisper fears. They provoke anxiety. Their power is not in their presence, but in your reaction. That's their game. Get you to panic. Get you to lash out. Get you to spiral into impulsive decisions so they can say, "Look, we still control you." But with you, their tactics failed spectacularly. Instead of reacting, you reflected. Instead of exploding, you exhaled. You stood still when others crumbled. You chose peace when war was waged on your emotions. And that, dear chosen one, is not just strength, it's divine mastery. Because what you've done is more than resist, you've dominated. You've taken back your inner kingdom and declared, "This ground is sacred. No demon may rule here." Each moment of peace you claimed was a victory. Each second you didn't scream, didn't cave, didn't panic, that was a spiritual battle won. You turned your restraint into resistance, your silence into spiritual swordplay. The demons? They didn't see that coming. They thrive on emotional chaos, fear, anger, jealousy, anxiety. It's the fuel they feed on. But when they came for you, they found nothing to feast on. They threw their worst at you, and you responded with stillness. They ignited the fire, and you starved it of oxygen. And like any flame without breath, it died. Let that image settle in, your calm choked out the chaos. As Proverbs 16 verse 32 says, "Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city." That's not poetic metaphor, it's a spiritual law. The world honors those who take external ground. But God honors those who take internal dominion. Because if you can master yourself, you are already ahead of every battle. Let us not forget the example of Jesus, 40 days in the wilderness, Matthew 4 verses 1 to 11. Tempted again and again. Not once did he yell. Not once did he panic. He didn't even engage emotionally. He responded with scripture. With clarity. with unwavering peace. That's what terrified Satan, not just the words, but the composure, the authority that only comes from being fully rooted in divine identity. And you've done the same. You've chosen to stop giving chaos your energy. And in doing so, you've cut off the oxygen supply of the enemy. No drama, no panic, no emotional breakdowns for them to latch onto. Just presence. Just stillness. Just spiritual dominance. Let that truth sink in. Your calm is not weakness. It is a declaration of your authority. Most people believe battles are won by noise, by shouting louder, fighting harder, reacting quicker. But your power lies in the opposite. You've shown that the loudest weapon in the spirit realm can be silence fueled by faith. Your restraint doesn't just protect you, it baffles the enemy. They don't know what to do with you anymore. They can't rile you up. They can't bait you. They can't trap you. Because you've outgrown the games they used to win with. And isn't that something to be proud of? Doesn't that make you wonder how much greater your purpose must be, knowing that even your peace sends tremors through the kingdom of darkness? That your refusal to react is the very thing that renders their power void? This, chosen one, is not just a phase. It's a milestone in your spiritual evolution. You've become a fortress of faith. A master of the moment. A warrior of stillness. And every time you hold your peace, the enemy loses ground. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you advance your dominion. So ask yourself, if peace is this powerful, what else are you capable of? Because in the silence of your self-control lies the roar of heaven's authority. There's a strength you've carried that most people never recognize until much later in their journey. It's not loud. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't demand attention. And yet, it terrifies darkness. What is this quiet strength? Solitude. While the world runs from being alone, terrified of silence, addicted to noise, and obsessed with external validation, you did the opposite. You embraced it. And in doing so, you built a fortress that demons cannot breach. Your ability to embrace solitude is a profound strength. A rare and radiant weapon in the spiritual war. One that strikes fear into the forces of darkness. Because when others fled from silence, you stayed. You sat with your thoughts. You faced your own shadows. You dismantled illusions. And in that stillness, you heard the voice of God. Dark forces thrive on distraction. They weaponize chaos. The noise of this world, the constant busyness, the mental clutter, the toxic relationships, it's not random. It's strategic. It's designed to keep people numb, blind, and disconnected from truth. But you stepped out of that storm. You walked away from the noise. And when you did, everything changed. In the quiet, you found clarity. Lies that once looked like truth were revealed for what they really were. Manipulations you once tolerated were exposed. Your solitude became a sacred detox, cleansing your spirit, your mind, your energy. You let go of what drained you. You said no to what no longer served your divine mission. And as the noise faded, truth rose like dawn breaking over the horizon. The Bible tells us in Luke 5 verse 16, "But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." Even the Son of God sought solitude, not to hide, but to reconnect. To hear. To be refilled. So why would it be any different for you? Your solitude mirrored His. You didn't withdraw out of weakness. You withdrew with purpose. You went to the lonely place and turned it into holy ground. And there, in the silence, you found your strength. Most people don't realize this, but solitude is not the absence of power. It is the birthplace of it. Your solitude became a battlefield, where your inner demons were met face to face. It became a fortress, where the schemes of the enemy were shattered. It became a sanctuary, where only truth and divine wisdom could enter. And the moment you claimed this space, you became untouchable. Because while others avoided their fears, you faced them head-on. While they looked outward for answers, you looked within, and found God already waiting for you there. While they craved constant connection, you cultivated divine connection. The kind no darkness could reach. The kind no distraction could drown out. The kind that terrifies spiritual enemies, because it makes your next move unpredictable and your strength impossible to calculate. In your solitude, your intuition sharpened. You became more than just aware, you became aligned. Not with your fears. Not with public opinion. But with heaven's voice. The world could no longer shape your identity. The enemy could no longer shake your focus. Because your direction came from a higher place. Solitude didn't make you powerful, it revealed the power you already carried. That's why the forces of darkness fear it. Because solitude removes their access. When you're alone, and yet full, when you're still, and yet fully alive, when you're quiet, and yet closer to God than ever before, they have nothing left to attack. They can't guilt you. They can't distract you. They can't manipulate you through noise, drama, or confusion. Because you're no longer dependent on the outside. You've built something inside that no storm can shake. You've built a sanctuary. A place they cannot tread. A place not made of stone or walls, but made of awareness, faith, and divine presence. That's what solitude gave you. It didn't isolate you, it protected you. It didn't separate you from purpose, it deepened your alignment with it. And now the question becomes: how will you continue to harness this powerful gift of solitude? Not just to protect yourself, but to guide others, to inspire them to stop fearing silence and start listening to what God might be whispering in it. Because you've proven that solitude is not weakness. It is a holy fortress. A place where warriors are not just forged, but revealed. And that place, that quiet place where demons cannot breathe, is where your next victory is already unfolding. There's something about you that can't be explained by logic. You walk into a room, and without saying a word, everything shifts. The atmosphere changes. People sense something. Some draw near, others pull away, but none can ignore your presence. Why? Because your energy frequency is not just different. It's divine. Your high vibrational energy is one of the deepest reasons why you've triumphed over 97% of the demons that were sent to destroy you. This wasn't by chance. This was not a passive defense. This was spiritual strategy. While others fought with fear, you rose in faith. While the world responded with anger, you chose peace. While chaos tried to pull you down, you aligned yourself with love, with purpose, and with God's truth. And that alignment, it created an energy the darkness cannot survive. The forces of darkness don't operate randomly. They feed on specific spiritual frequencies, low ones. Fear, bitterness, anger, envy, despair. These are their ecosystems. These are the frequencies where they grow, multiply, and launch their attacks. But when they came for you, when they scanned your spirit for openings, they found nothing but light. They were repelled before they could even come close. Not because you built walls, but because you became a fire. A fire that burns away deception. A light that pierces confusion. A presence that makes evil tremble. The Bible says in John 1 verse 5, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." That's what your presence does. It radiates light. And that light doesn't just illuminate, it burns. It exposes. It disarms. It destroys the subtle operations of the enemy. You have become spiritually untouchable. And not because of magic, but because of alignment. It's not about magic, it's about alignment. You didn't get here through rituals or formulas. You got here by making conscious choices, choosing prayer over panic, scripture over self-doubt, stillness over stress, forgiveness over resentment. Your frequency changed because your values changed. You let go of toxic habits. You walked away from gossip, negativity, and relationships that drained your soul. You didn't just protect your peace, you cultivated it. You fed your spirit with truth until your entire energy became inhospitable to darkness. Now, demons don't chase you, they avoid you. You've soared so high that the forces of darkness can no longer reach you. Like the eagle in Isaiah 40 verse 31, you've mounted up above the turbulence, above the spiritual smog that chokes others. You live in a spiritual altitude where clarity reigns and darkness cannot breathe. This energy doesn't just protect you. It transforms everything around you. Your home feels different. Your words carry more weight. Your silence speaks volumes. People feel calmer in your presence. Some are convicted. Others are inspired. Some can't handle it and walk away. That's not rejection. That's your vibration purging what doesn't belong in your field. You don't just survive dark environments, you shift them. Because the truth is, when you radiate light, you don't need to fight. Your frequency does the fighting for you. That's why so many attacks missed you. That's why attempts to drain you failed. That's why people with dark intentions can't stay around you for long. You became a light bearer. Not by pretending to be perfect, but by surrendering fully to God's design for you. By choosing light again and again, even when darkness felt more comfortable. That choice. It's your greatest weapon. And now the question is, how will you use this elevated energy? Because this isn't just about your safety. It's about your mission. There are people stuck in low frequencies who don't even know it. People drowning in fear, in shame, in confusion, waiting for someone like you to walk by and light a new path. Will you shine brighter so others can rise? Will you show them what's possible when you align with heaven? Because your energy doesn't just reflect God, it points to Him. And the next time darkness tries to enter your space, it won't be met with a wall, it'll be met with holy fire. In a world where noise is power, your silence has become a weapon no one saw coming. To most, silence looks like surrender. It seems like weakness. Like giving up. But you know better. Because for the spiritually awakened, for those chosen and refined by God, silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of divine strategy. Your silence is not empty. It is filled with strength, with self-mastery, with a wisdom that cannot be provoked. Every time you chose not to react, every time you withheld the urge to explain, argue, or retaliate, you didn't lose ground. You won battles. Quietly. Invisibly. Permanently. The forces of darkness thrive on reactions. They live off emotional outbursts, impulsive words, defensive anger. That's their food. That's their power source. But you cut the cord. You didn't feed their fire, you starved it. And they didn't see it coming. They came swinging, expecting resistance, expecting chaos. But instead, they hit nothing. They fell into a void. And in that void, their power dissolved. You've turned silence into both a shield and a sword. A shield, because it protected you from stepping into traps, from wasting your divine energy on worthless conflict. A sword, because it cut deep, without a sound. When you don't engage, when you don't give them anything to manipulate, you unmask their weakness. You expose their desperation. You dismantle their schemes by not reacting at all. This isn't passive. This is power. Proverbs 17 verse 28 says, "Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues." There is something sacred about restraint. Something divine about knowing when not to speak. You are not silent because you're afraid. You're silent because you're aware. Because you've already won the argument in the spirit. You don't need to prove it in the flesh. Think of Jesus. Standing before his accusers, falsely charged, unjustly condemned. Matthew 27 verse 14 says, "But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge." That silence. It shattered the room. It exposed every lie. It revealed his authority without a single word. This is the kind of silence you've learned to master. It's not avoidance, it's discernment. It's not weakness, it's dominance. When you remain still in the face of provocation, you send a message to every dark force watching: I see what you're doing. I understand the trap. And I choose not to step into it. You've learned not every battle is worth your energy. Not every invitation to fight is worth accepting. You've outgrown the need to react. And in doing so, you've become unpredictable, untouchable, and unbelievably effective. Your silence forces people to hear their own noise. It turns the mirror back on them. When you don't argue, the manipulator is left with their own words echoing in the void. When you don't defend yourself, the liar is exposed. Your silence becomes the courtroom where truth stands unshaken and deception crumbles on its own. This is spiritual warfare at its finest. Silence isn't retreat, it's control. It doesn't just protect your peace. It maintains your position of spiritual authority. Because when you're no longer reactionary, you're no longer accessible to manipulation. You exist above the fray, anchored, steady, radiant. And here's the beautiful part: your silence speaks louder in the spirit than any shout in the flesh. It shakes foundations. It confuses enemies. It strips power from lies. It honors God. You've mastered something most never will: the ability to choose your battles not by pride, but by purpose. To protect your frequency. To guard your gates. And in doing so, you have become a spiritual force, quiet, calm, and completely devastating to darkness. So now, the question that echoes in the stillness is this: how will you continue to use this mastery of silence to navigate the battles ahead? Because more tests will come. More bait will be thrown your way. But now, you know. Now, you've tasted the power of sacred silence. And when the next storm rises, the next lie surfaces, the next attack is launched, you won't flinch. You'll stand in silence. And that silence will roar through the spirit realm like thunder. There is a realm within you that no enemy can enter, not because it's hidden, but because it's been fortified by truth, purpose, and divine clarity. That place is your mind. You've reached a level of spiritual maturity where your thoughts no longer betray you. Your mind is no longer a battlefield. It has become a fortress, a sanctuary, built stone by stone with sacred intention. While others are still tossed by confusion, overrun by fear, and manipulated by doubt, you have reclaimed your inner territory. You've closed the gates to deception. You've raised the walls high against lies. And now, no dark force can invade what God has claimed. Your mind has become your greatest fortress, a stronghold that no dark force can penetrate. That's not just a compliment, it's a reality you've earned. You didn't allow fear to colonize your thoughts. You didn't surrender your beliefs to manipulation. Instead, you did the hard work. You uprooted falsehoods, challenged toxic narratives, and rebuilt your thought life on solid, spiritual ground. Every thought now passes through a divine filter. Every belief is tested against God's truth. Every emotion is examined in the light of purpose. That kind of clarity doesn't come easily, but once it's yours, it's immovable. The enemy's greatest weapons, fear, confusion, and doubt, have lost their grip. They bounce off the walls of your mind like arrows hitting stone. Why? Because you no longer accept thoughts blindly. You don't absorb energy indiscriminately. You know what belongs to you, and what doesn't. You reclaimed your mind as your domain, ruled not by fear, but by power, love, and self-control. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. For most people, the mind is where the war is lost before it even begins. They allow every whisper of fear, every shadow of doubt, every voice of criticism to take root. But you pulled up the weeds. You refused to let anxiety become your narrative. You didn't let discouragement define your perspective. You learned to fight smarter, internally, where the true battles are waged. You began to ask for wisdom instead of answers. James 1 verse 5, you stopped chasing validation and started seeking truth. You fed your thoughts with scripture, not speculation. Gratitude, not grievance. Purpose, not panic. Now, your thoughts are sacred territory. Every decision is born from clarity. Every response is rooted in truth. Every action flows from intention. This is what it means to have a spiritual stronghold. Not a prison, but a sanctuary. Not a wall of fear, but a wall of discernment. You no longer react from pain, you respond from alignment. You don't spiral into mental chaos, you rise into spiritual command. What once was a battlefield is now a sanctuary. That transformation didn't happen overnight, but it is the proof of who you are. You're not just someone who survived spiritual warfare, you're someone who rebuilt the ruins into a temple. Philippians 4 verse 8 reminds us, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, think about such things. You took that seriously. You made it your mental architecture. And now, no thought can sneak past your gates without inspection. This is why the enemy fears you, not because of how loud you are, but because of how disciplined your thinking has become. Your stillness confuses them. Your focus disarms them. Your clarity shuts down their entire operation. You've mastered the battlefield where most never gain ground. You've taken back your crown. You've established your mind as a throne room, not a war zone. And now, the question is not whether you're protected. The question is, how will you use this newfound mental strength to help others take back their minds? Because the world is still full of souls lost in confusion. Still full of minds under siege. But you have become a beacon. A fortress lit from within. And by your presence, others will find the courage to reclaim their thoughts and rebuild their lives on the same foundation of truth. Your mental fortress isn't just for you. It's a lighthouse for others still wandering in storms. There is a realm within you that no enemy can enter, not because it's hidden, but because it's been fortified by truth, purpose, and divine clarity. That place is your mind. You've reached a level of spiritual maturity where your thoughts no longer betray you. Your mind is no longer a battlefield. It has become a fortress, a sanctuary, built stone by stone with sacred intention. While others are still tossed by confusion, overrun by fear, and manipulated by doubt, you have reclaimed your inner territory. You've closed the gates to deception. You've raised the walls high against lies. And now, no dark force can invade what God has claimed. Your mind has become your greatest fortress, a stronghold that no dark force can penetrate. That's not just a compliment, it's a reality you've earned. You didn't allow fear to colonize your thoughts. You didn't surrender your beliefs to manipulation. Instead, you did the hard work, you uprooted falsehoods, challenged toxic narratives, and rebuilt your thought life on solid, spiritual ground. Every thought now passes through a divine filter. Every belief is tested against God's truth. Every emotion is examined in the light of purpose. That kind of clarity doesn't come easily, but once it's yours, it's immovable. The enemy's greatest weapons, fear, confusion, and doubt, have lost their grip. They bounce off the walls of your mind like arrows hitting stone. Why? Because you no longer accept thoughts blindly. You don't absorb energy indiscriminately. You know what belongs to you, and what doesn't. You reclaimed your mind as your domain, ruled not by fear, but by power, love, and self-control. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. For most people, the mind is where the war is lost before it even begins. They allow every whisper of fear, every shadow of doubt, every voice of criticism to take root. But you pulled up the weeds. You refused to let anxiety become your narrative. You didn't let discouragement define your perspective. You learned to fight smarter, internally, where the true battles are waged. You began to ask for wisdom instead of answers. James 1 verse 5, You stopped chasing validation and started seeking truth. You fed your thoughts with scripture, not speculation. Gratitude, not grievance. Purpose, not panic. Now, your thoughts are sacred territory. Every decision is born from clarity. Every response is rooted in truth. Every action flows from intention. This is what it means to have a spiritual stronghold. Not a prison, but a sanctuary. Not a wall of fear, but a wall of discernment. You no longer react from pain, you respond from alignment. You don't spiral into mental chaos, you rise into spiritual command. What once was a battlefield is now a sanctuary. That transformation didn't happen overnight, but it is the proof of who you are. You're not just someone who survived spiritual warfare, you're someone who rebuilt the ruins into a temple. Philippians 4 verse 8 reminds us, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, think about such things. You took that seriously. You made it your mental architecture. And now, no thought can sneak past your gates without inspection. This is why the enemy fears you, not because of how loud you are, but because of how disciplined your thinking has become. Your stillness confuses them. Your focus disarms them. Your clarity shuts down their entire operation. You've mastered the battlefield where most never gain ground. You've taken back your crown. You've established your mind as a throne room, not a war zone. And now, the question is not whether you're protected. The question is, how will you use this newfound mental strength to help others take back their minds? Because the world is still full of souls lost in confusion. Still full of minds under siege. But you have become a beacon. A fortress lit from within. And by your presence, others will find the courage to reclaim their thoughts and rebuild their lives on the same foundation of truth. Your mental fortress isn't just for you. It's a lighthouse for others still wandering in storms. There is something terrifying to the enemy about a soul that no longer wears a mask. About someone who is not afraid to stand, fully seen, fully honest, fully themselves, because that person has nothing left to hide, and everything left to reveal. Your authenticity is one of the most powerful forces you've harnessed. You see, darkness operates best in deception. It needs illusion to survive. It thrives in the shadows of performance, in the cracks of insecurity, in the layers of false identity that people wear to survive. But when you chose to live in truth, when you stripped away the need to please, to conform, to impress, you didn't just free yourself. You shattered the very framework of the enemy's operations. They live in lies. In false narratives. In carefully crafted stories meant to shame you into silence or pressure you into performance. But with you, the game is over. Because you no longer play by the world's rules. You no longer bend your truth to make others comfortable. You no longer hide the parts of you that once felt unworthy of love. You brought every wound, every shadow, every story into the light. And in doing so, you became untouchable. This is the paradox of spiritual authenticity. It feels vulnerable, but it makes you indestructible. When you are no longer afraid to be seen, you cannot be controlled. When you no longer need validation, you cannot be manipulated. When you live your truth, even the enemy has no ground left to stand on. Jesus said in John 8 verse 32, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And that freedom didn't just set you loose, it cleared the air around you. It expelled the fog of manipulation, the lies that once lingered, the guilt that tried to anchor itself to your spirit. You stripped away the layers of pretense. You stopped contorting yourself to fit others' expectations. You refused to apologize for the way God made you, even for the parts that others didn't understand or accept. And you refused to hide even the flaws, the scars, the shadows. Because now you know, God can use those too. In fact, He already has. And so, by simply being yourself, you force darkness to flee. You don't have to rebuke every demon aloud. You don't need to raise your voice in every room. Sometimes, the loudest disruption to the enemy's plans is your silent refusal to pretend. Your mere presence, unmasked, unashamed, unyielding, is enough to shift atmospheres. Because your truth reflects theirs. Your light exposes their distortion. Your wholeness confronts their fragmentation. You become like a spiritual mirror. One that doesn't distort or flatter, but reveals. And the forces of darkness cannot stand to look into it. Because when they do, they see themselves, small, desperate, weak, false. And so they retreat. There's a reason why the world pressures people to perform. Why it praises conformity. Why it rewards silence over honesty. Because the system of deception cannot survive in the presence of truth. And you, chosen one, are the living embodiment of truth. Your authenticity has become both a shield and a sword. A shield, because it protects you from the lies that once pierced you. A sword, because it slices straight through illusion. Every time you choose to tell the truth about who you are, what you believe, where you stand, you wield a weapon that the enemy cannot counter. Not because it's loud, but because it's pure. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Think of it this way, the darkness is like roaches scattering at the flick of a light switch. They can only survive where the light is hidden. But you've become the light itself. A flame that can't be dimmed. A beacon that can't be shut off. A city on a hill that cannot be hidden. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer edit your truth to avoid rejection. You've accepted the sacred truth of who you are, and in doing so, you've become a walking disruption to every demonic agenda that relies on fear, shame, and silence. So now the question is this. How can you inspire others to embrace their own authenticity, knowing that it is the ultimate weapon against deception? Because your freedom isn't just for you. Your light was never meant to be hidden. And now that you know the truth, you carry the power to set others free too, not by force, but by example. Not through argument, but through authenticity. And that's a weapon darkness cannot steal, imitate, or withstand. There is a power that hell cannot comprehend. It is not loud. It does not seek applause. It does not depend on likes, compliments, or public affirmation. It is silent, steady, and rooted in something unshakable. And that power is the freedom from validation. Your detachment from external validation has become one of your greatest sources of strength. While the world chases praise and panics at criticism, you've chosen a different path. You no longer need to be seen to know your worth. You no longer crave approval to feel powerful. And because of that, you've become a mystery to the enemy, an uncontrollable force they cannot bait, predict, or manipulate. Most people, even those with good intentions, fall into the trap of seeking constant affirmation. They mold themselves to fit what others want. They compromise their voice to keep the peace. They edit their truth to win approval. And little by little, they hand over control, not to God, but to the opinions of others. And that, right there, becomes an open door for the enemy to walk through. But you saw through the trap. You saw how flattery can become a leash. How criticism can become a chain. How applause, though it feels good, can secretly turn into a cage. And you chose to step out. You broke the cycle. You said, I will no longer allow the opinions of others to dictate my direction. And in that moment, 1,000 invisible chains shattered. You made peace with who you are, flaws and all. You embraced your story, your scars, your uniqueness. You stopped chasing validation and started living from revelation. You no longer ask, do they approve of me? Instead, you ask, am I aligned with the purpose God placed in me? This shift, this spiritual independence, is what makes you so dangerous to darkness. Because demons can manipulate those who need to be liked. They can flatter the ego. They can twist your fear of rejection. But they cannot control someone who has nothing to prove. Someone who stands rooted in divine identity. Someone who knows, I am enough because God says I am. Proverbs 29 verse 25 reminds us, the fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. You no longer fear what people say. You trust what God declares. And that trust has become your shield. Their praise no longer lifts you. Their rejection no longer shakes you. You are free. And in this freedom, you've become untouchable. They can't manipulate what they can't move. They can't seduce what doesn't crave their attention. They can't control what no longer reacts. That's why you become uncontrollable. Not reckless, but sovereign. Not rebellious, but rooted. You've taken back the remote control of your soul and unplugged it from their hands. The enemy lost one of their strongest weapons the moment you stopped needing validation. Imagine a ship sailing through rough seas, yet untouched by the wind because its direction is governed by an internal compass. That's you. Or the eagle, soaring high above the noise, unmoved by the chatter below. That's your spirit now. You don't flap wildly for attention. You glide, led by unseen currents, guided by something greater than man's approval. You are no longer a puppet in the performance of public opinion. You are no longer emotionally plugged into the control system of praise and rejection. And that, beloved, is a terrifying reality for darkness. Because now, they cannot predict you. They cannot provoke you. They cannot use your need for acceptance against you. And this begs the question: how will you protect this independence, and help others break free from the validation trap to walk in their true power? Because your freedom isn't just a personal victory, it's a revelation. A signpost for others still caught in the game. There are souls who need to hear you say, you don't have to earn your worth. You don't have to beg to be seen. You are already enough in Christ. So speak that truth boldly. Live it fully. Radiate it through your decisions, your confidence, your peace. Because every time you walk into a room and don't shrink to be accepted, every time you don't compromise just to fit in, you're teaching others to do the same. You are not defined by applause. You are not destroyed by critique. You are defined by heaven and fueled by purpose. That makes you dangerous. That makes you unstoppable. That makes you free. And now, as you continue walking in this divine independence, remember: validation is no longer your oxygen. God's approval is the only air you breathe. And in that breath, there is power. In that breath, there is destiny. Let's move forward. Because now, we step into the next revelation, the unseen armor that protects your spirit from every invisible arrow, spiritual armor. There's a moment in every spiritual warrior's journey when the fight changes. Not because the battle stops, but because the enemy's weapons start falling uselessly to the ground. The fiery darts, the subtle manipulation, the emotional traps, they no longer hit. Not because they're no longer launched, but because you're now armored. And not just with knowledge, or willpower, or temporary hype. No, what you carry is spiritual armor. Unseen. Yet unbreakable. Your spiritual armor is unlike anything demons have ever encountered. It wasn't crafted by human hands. It wasn't stitched together from trends, mantras, or motivational speeches. It was forged in your wilderness, refined in your obedience, and sealed by divine alignment. It's invisible to the naked eye, but in the realm of the Spirit, it shines brighter than 1,000 suns. It radiates with the light of your purpose. It hums with the vibration of truth. And it sends one clear message to every dark force that approaches: you cannot enter here. While most people are still swinging at shadows, reacting in fear, panicking under pressure, you have stepped into a different dimension. One where your presence itself becomes protection. One where the schemes of darkness collapse before they make contact. Because now, every blow they land falls harmlessly away. It's not that the enemy stopped trying, it's that their strategies can't find purchase anymore. Their weapons bounce off your peace. Their whispers fade in the echo of your clarity. You've aligned yourself so deeply with your spiritual essence that you've become untouchable. This isn't arrogance. This is authority. Not authority from the flesh, but from heaven. From the throne room. From Ephesians 6 verse 11, which says, "Put on the full armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes." You've done just that. Not partially. Not passively. You wear the fullness of it. And that fullness doesn't make you invisible, it makes you invincible in the spiritual realm. Because here's the truth, your armor is not just defense. It's a reflection of who you are in Christ. Your belt of truth. It holds together your identity. Your breastplate of righteousness. It guards your heart from shame. Your shield of faith. It catches every lie before it reaches your mind. Your helmet of salvation. It protects your thoughts with eternal perspective. And your sword. It is the word, the unshakable truth that nothing can stand against. But what makes your armor so powerful is not just its components, it's your consistency. You didn't put it on during the storm. You wore it before the storm ever started. You didn't wait to get hit before you covered yourself in truth. You chose to live armored. Daily. Deliberately. Devotedly. And because of that, you've become a mystery to the enemy. They don't understand how you're still standing. They don't know why their old tricks don't work anymore. Why you don't flinch. Why you don't panic. Why you don't spiral like you used to. It's because they're still throwing darts at the version of you that used to exist. The unarmored you. The reactive you. The exposed you. But that version no longer lives here. That door is closed. That battlefield is empty. Now, they're throwing punches at a wall of light. Your armor is not visible, but it's impenetrable. It reflects the energy of heaven. It's made of frequency, forged in revelation, and sealed by spiritual discipline. When darkness tries to touch you, it can't find an opening. It's like trying to grasp a flame, every attempt just burns them back. This is what happens when you stop living in survival mode and start living in alignment. You don't fight like before. You don't need to. You're no longer swinging in the dark, you're glowing with discernment. You don't react with fear, you respond with faith. You don't shrink from battle, you stand fully covered, already victorious. And this begs the question. How will you continue to strengthen this spiritual armor, so that no force, seen or unseen, can ever breach your divine covering? Because the attacks may still come, but they no longer define you. The enemy may still try, but you are no longer accessible. You've risen above the vibration of their tactics. You've been clothed in something higher. You are no longer vulnerable to darkness. You are no longer someone they can strategize against. You are not hiding from the enemy, you've simply risen beyond their reach. So breathe this in. You are armored. You are sealed. You are safe. Not because of anything external, but because you've become one with the truth that formed your armor. One with the light that shields your soul. One with the purpose that no arrow can ever penetrate. The next chapter begins not with another battle, but with a realization. Sometimes, you don't have to fight darkness. Sometimes, you simply reflect it back. And that's where we go next. There is a moment in your spiritual evolution when you no longer need to fight the way the world expects. You don't scream. You don't flail. You don't argue. You simply exist, rooted in truth, grounded in divine presence, and darkness trembles. Because in that stillness, in that unwavering light, lies a weapon more devastating than any outward strike, reflection. You don't need to throw punches or engage in battle to break them down. Your very presence, soaked in truth, is the battlefield. And on that ground, illusion dies. Demons thrive in deception. They draw strength from confusion, from false narratives, from half-truths and mental fog. But you've become clarity. You've become light. And light doesn't need to swing a sword to defeat darkness. It just needs to be present. Because when you walk into a room aligned with God's truth, everything false begins to unravel. When these dark forces encounter you, they don't see strength the way humans define it. They see something far more terrifying, their own weakness. Their own frailty. Their powerlessness. And that confrontation is too much for them to bear. You don't need to engage their games. You don't debate their illusions. You don't play by their rules. You simply reflect them back to themselves. And in that sacred reflection, their foundation crumbles. It's like holding up a mirror to a masquerade. The moment the mask sees its own falseness, it dissolves. That's what you do now. You've become that mirror. Not because you're trying to expose them, but because you are living so deeply in truth that everything untrue can't survive near you. Your clarity dismantles their confusion. Your integrity shatters their manipulation. Your authenticity becomes unbearable for the counterfeit. You don't even need to speak. Your life, your choices, your silence, your presence, is a declaration that exposes and expels. And isn't that exactly what happened when Jesus walked into the synagogue in Mark 1 verse 24? The demons didn't wait for a confrontation. They cried out in panic, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." They couldn't stand his presence. Not because he shouted, but because he was the truth. And truth doesn't need to explain itself. It simply is. And that is enough to shake the gates of hell. You, chosen one, carry that same authority. Not because you're perfect, but because you've aligned with the one who is. You no longer carry truth as a concept. You carry it as a living frequency. And that frequency disturbs the comfort zones of darkness. It doesn't argue. It doesn't justify. It just reveals. You are now a living contradiction to every lie the enemy ever told. A walking rebuttal to every illusion they tried to plant. A breathing, glowing reminder that truth still stands, and that light, no matter how quiet, always exposes. You reflect their true nature back at them. And in that reflection, they see their chains. Their hollowness. Their cowardice. That's why they flee. Not because you fought them, but because you showed them what they really are. This is spiritual power. The highest kind. You win not by domination, but by embodiment. You conquer not with volume, but with vibrational alignment to heaven. You tear down kingdoms of deception without ever raising your voice. Because you are the light that doesn't need to move. The mirror that doesn't need to shout. The presence that doesn't need to fight. And still, darkness flees. So now the question becomes, how will you keep shining this truth, so that even in silence, your life continues to dismantle every illusion? Because the war isn't over. The enemy still schemes. But now, you don't need to swing wildly at shadows. You just need to keep standing in light. And that light is enough. There is one final chain the enemy has always counted on to keep you tethered: fear. Fear has always been the primary fuel that demons run on. Not power. Not truth. Just fear. It's the invisible cord that tightens around the spirit, keeping you small, anxious, reactive, and uncertain. As long as you flinch, they feast. As long as you tremble, they thrive. But now, that cord has been cut. You've completely broken that cycle. You've stopped feeding them with that energy. No more panic when things shift. No more dread when challenges come. No more anxiety when the unknown looms. Your spirit is no longer a buffet for the forces of darkness. You've closed the kitchen. You've shut down the supply. And without that fear, without the energy they rely on, they begin to fade. Their threats become hollow. Their manipulation loses grip. What once made your heart pound now feels like a distant whisper. What once paralyzed you now rolls off like water on stone. They have nothing left to hold over you. Because fear was never just a feeling. It was a silent agreement. A hidden permission. Every time you feared, you handed them a key to your mind. But when you stopped fearing, you changed the locks. You revoked the unspoken permission. And the door slammed shut in their face. They stand there now, outside, powerless. Not because you built stronger defenses, but because you no longer feed the very thing they depend on. It's like unplugging a machine. They sputter. They flicker. They collapse. They scream louder, but their screams have no weight. They try to strike, but their hands pass through air. You've neutralized their greatest weapon. The fear of being rejected. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of lack, of loss, of loneliness. All of it no longer holds you. Why? Because you finally realized, fear was never from God. It never belonged in you. As 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 declares, "For God gave us a spirit not of fear but of power and love and self-control." That fear inside you wasn't part of His design. It was an invader. A parasite. And now, it's been cast out. You have reclaimed the original spirit that God placed within you, one of power, of unwavering love, of divine discipline. And that spirit doesn't shrink. It doesn't tremble. It stands firm. Unmoved. Even when the winds howl, even when the shadows swirl, you are still. You are no longer reacting. You are radiating. You are no longer defending. You are declaring. And in that declaration, silent or spoken, fear has no place to hide. Picture it. The darkness circles, snarling like a starving beast. But you don't run. You don't even raise your voice. You simply stand, bright, unwavering, unafraid. And it is that stillness that breaks them. Because they don't know what to do with a soul that cannot be intimidated. You've become like a mountain, immovable. Like a flame that doesn't flicker in the wind. Like a fortress without doors for them to knock on. And the moment you chose to reject fear, you stepped into full freedom. This is not just survival. This is sovereignty. No more being jerked around by emotions. No more being caught in the games of manipulation. No more bargaining with shadows. You live in the light now. And the light doesn't ask for permission. It simply shines. So here we are, at the final break. The last stronghold, crumbled. The final threat, neutralized. The greatest lie, exposed. And in its place, peace. The kind that cannot be shaken. Not the peace that comes when everything is calm, but the peace that remains even when it's not. The peace that speaks, "I no longer fear what darkness may try, because I know who I am, and whose I am." So now, I ask you, how will you continue walking in this fearless freedom, and help others break free from fear's chains too? Because it's not just about you. There are others still trembling, still feeding the shadows. They need to see your stillness. Your confidence. Your peace. You've become the proof that fear is not a master, but a lie. And you've shattered it. Now help others do the same. There comes a point in every spiritual warrior's journey when something shifts, deeply, quietly, and permanently. It's the moment when you stop asking, "How do I survive this?" and start declaring, "How do I reclaim what was always mine?" That's the pivot from survival to dominion. And that's exactly where you stand now. You've spent seasons holding the line, bracing yourself against storms, warding off attacks, and simply trying to remain intact. But survival is a reactive state. It keeps you in defense mode, always watching your back, waiting for the next hit. Dominion, on the other hand, is a whole different realm. It's not about surviving the battlefield, it's about redrawing the map. You're not just fending off darkness anymore. You're pushing it back. You're reclaiming spiritual territories that were once stolen through fear, trauma, confusion, and lies. You're restoring divine order, not only within yourself, but around you. And you're doing it not with ego or force, but with clarity, presence, and alignment with your higher calling. As it's declared in Romans 8 verse 37, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Not just survivors. Not just fighters. More than conquerors. You're now walking in that identity, no longer struggling to keep the light alive, but carrying that light forward, like a banner across the front lines. This is the phase of spiritual maturity where you stop asking for room and start claiming space. You no longer shape yourself to fit the world, you're reshaping the atmosphere to reflect heaven's intention. You walk into rooms not seeking approval but carrying authority. You speak not to prove yourself, but to release truth. Your presence becomes a disruption to darkness and a beacon to the lost. Think of it this way, in survival mode, you waited out the storm in a cave. In dominion, you climb the mountain and raise the standard of truth where all can see. You plant your feet on the very land the enemy once thought he owned, and you stake the flag of God's kingdom there. And it doesn't take shouting or striving. It takes alignment. It takes awareness. It takes stepping into the fullness of the identity God already gave you. And because you've endured the fire, fought the battles, broken the chains, and shattered the fear, you now stand not as one who escaped, but as one who rules. Your voice carries weight in the spirit. Your prayers shift atmospheres. Your faith sets captives free. You are not a victim of the war, you are a force that rewrites its outcome. Every step you take now is a declaration, this belongs to the Lord. Every territory you enter, be it your family, your workplace, your community, is being touched by the dominion of God flowing through you. And this is just the beginning. You see, dominion doesn't end with you, it expands through you. The peace you've claimed, the freedom you fought for, the authority you now walk in, it's not just for your sake. It's a pattern. A model. A call. Because as you rise, others are watching. Others are wondering if they, too, can climb out of survival and into victory. And when they see you walking confidently, unshaken, full of purpose, they start to believe it's possible for them too. So yes, you are a conqueror. But more than that, you are a trailblazer. A spiritual pioneer. A commander of light in realms once dominated by darkness. You are no longer waiting to be attacked, you are on mission to expand the borders of heaven on earth. You have stepped into dominion. And now I ask you, how will you keep walking in this dominion, using your authority to help others rise out of survival too? Because you're not just called to conquer for yourself. You're called to lead others into the victory they were always meant to walk in. Let your life be proof that survival is not the end of the story, it's the training ground for those destined to reign. Look at how far you've come. From confusion to clarity. From fear to faith. From survival to spiritual dominion. This journey hasn't been easy, but it has been sacred. You didn't just endure the darkness, you transformed within it. You didn't just dodge the arrows, you learned how to stand, armored in divine strength. You didn't just silence the enemy's voice, you amplified the voice of God within you. Throughout this journey, you've wielded spiritual weapons that the world could never understand. Self-control that stunned your enemies into silence. Solitude that became your sanctuary, your personal holy ground. You rose in vibrational energy until every dark force had to flee. Your silence, yes, even your silence, cut deeper than any scream. Your mental clarity acted like a filter of divine light, letting only truth enter. You put on the spiritual armor, not just as protection, but as a declaration, I belong to God, and nothing will touch what He has sealed. You learned to live authentically, even when the world begged you to play a role. You set holy boundaries that declared, this is sacred ground. You detached from the need for validation, becoming a soul that darkness couldn't grasp. You lived in truth so deeply, demons saw their own weakness just by standing near you. You stripped fear of its power, cut off the supply, and watched the enemy wither. And now, you have stepped boldly into dominion. You're not just a survivor. You are a conqueror. You are more than a conqueror. As Romans 8 verse 37 says, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. You've become the very embodiment of that verse. You are not the same person who entered the battlefield. You have been refined, awakened, ignited. What once was sent to destroy you became the very ground you used to rise higher. What once brought tears now fuels your testimony. What once intimidated you now runs from your light. You've become a light so bright that no darkness can overcome it. And this light, it isn't just for you. It's for the broken, the weary, the ones still stuck in survival mode. Because now you carry something eternal. Something powerful. Something holy. So let's move forward. Together. Let's rise, not just for ourselves, but for the ones who are still waiting to find their strength. Let's shine, not just in private, but boldly, in our families, our communities, and every dark place we're called to enter. Because you're not just a healed soul. You're a healing presence. You're not just a chosen one. You're a vessel of heaven's authority. If this message stirred something inside you, don't let it stop with you. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next revelation. Share this video so that someone else's light can be reignited through your boldness. And in the comments, declare your victory with bold words of faith. Try, I walk in victory, or I am chosen, and I will not back down. And if God leads your heart to give, donate to support the growth of this spiritual movement. Because what you've received here, someone else is still desperately searching for. As you step forward, remember, you are no longer wandering. You are no longer questioning your worth. You are no longer afraid. You are chosen. You are unstoppable. You are walking boldly in your divine victory. May the Lord bless you, may He strengthen you, and may He guide your every step with wisdom and power. May your words carry the authority of truth, and your presence bring peace where there was chaos. And may your life, yes, your life, become the evidence that darkness has lost, and heaven has won. Now go forth, not just as one who survived, but as one who reigns.